Mr. Director, dear colleagues. It is an eternal story of each city in the world. Charming landscape, peaceful place, large parks and apartments nearby, quiet and comfortable to live in. Children on a green lawn, families walking down the street, trams with ticket inspectors on the back platform open to people who are jumping in. A big dignified statue A big dignified statue of Copernicus, pensively observing the passers-by and the busy street from its pedestal. First thing that comes to mind is order and security. The space is safe, days are well planned and well organized. Things are going as they should. Certainly, it's not a mythical land of dreams Arcadia. It's not the image of an old and ideal world. Cliché of the olden days, memories from the past are an indispensable component of our present thinking. There is no doubt that our memory makes picture nicer than it really was. It creates impressions more beautiful than the most colorful postcards we can currently admire. Memory and its creative influence is a part of human capacity and social identity. Reminiscences of the period one lived in remain for generations and become a part of both personal biography and national history. The explanation of this phenomenon is quite simple. It is a part of the heritage, since it builds the collective memory and links us with our roots. Let me underline the main point here. Reminiscence can be viewed as a crucial factor linking the past and the present, and, what is most important in this analysis, in a certain moment of time, it can change the whole situation and the way we later perceive it. This is also another aspect. There is also another aspect of social memory. It stays in our mind in collective and personal memory of a landscape, in general view of cities, streets, and buildings. We remember quite vividly the monuments, churches, trees, and lakes. Our imagination tells us long stories about our past. It reminds us of our family's stories and experiences, and all the public events that occurred in a specific space. Such collective and personal memory of certain space is a foundation and decisive element of our cultural and national identity, a series of images which leads to a chain of associations. Memory is a very creative and powerful force for our plans and new endeavors, becoming a point of reference when judging its value and permitting us to increase and enrich our life and earth. Each society has its own frame of public life consisting of rituals and habits, which are obligatory for all citizens in daily situations. They stem from the past and old cliché, always seen under the eyelids, subconsciously followed. The same remembrance gives us the strength to undertake new tasks and face new challenges. The main enemy, looking from this perspective, is an oblivion, the white sheet behind us, an empty page in our memory book. Certainly, there are many reasons why we forget our common history, why we don't pay attention to facts so previously important and so dear just a while ago. Too many things pass too quickly. Too many sensations affect us each moment, and they fill our thoughts and dreams projects prepared, and opinions ready to be expressed. What we have to remember, though, is that we always have very useful, no, that's, that we always have very useful support system, excellent landmarks, extraordinary instruments to gather our memories and track down our memory lane. It is our cultural landscape, a cultural context arising from historical reminders and vestiges. It regards both the personal and general level. Personally, we may recall certain situations, landscapes from our childhood, or an illustration from an album or a book we've loved in the past. Let me paint an illustration for you. The tower visible on the horizon, the railway station with the main entrance with the kiosk and neon sign, the square with strange flowers and big tree in the center of green lawn. On more general level, each community may have its own memories, urban reminders of the past with their own significance and meaning, known only to those privy to the knowledge, the inner circle, the community members. In Poland, such a symbol could be interwar Warsaw with its elegant streets, dense urban development from the 19th century in the center, the Saski Square with elegant palaces. I've read that such a symbol in Latvia might be the House of Black Hats in Riga, if I'm correct, finally reconstructed in the 90s. We recall these images, both personal and general, often, especially when come across similar places or accidental situations that remind us of them. We get back to them. There are extremely strong points of reference, determinants of our choices and preferences, sometimes not even conscious ones. This is why sudden massive destruction of such powerful urban symbols often facilitates an introduction of new order in political and public life. In Polish case, there used to be a Kronenberg's Palace, heavily damaged by the Germans, but perfectly possible to renovate and rebuild. Among the city of ruins, it was rather in a good shape. However, the political decision condemned the building to razing to the ground rather than rising like a phoenix from the ashes. The communist authorities decided that due to its German bourgeois style, it should be removed from the registry of objects of cultural heritage. The palace was demolished soon after. Such symbols are not always unequivocal. They are constantly being questioned and debated. Their meaning can slowly change through the time with generations coming and going. Some of the symbols gain in importance. Some of them lose it. Some of them are being pushed on the pedestal. Some of them are being carefully omitted. One thing is obvious though. The annihilation of symbolic buildings or monuments represents a grave danger for social coherence and can even undermine the existence of local or national community. World War II showed clearly that the invaders had one goal. The memory of the local inhabitants should disappear and can be completely erased together with their monuments and symbols. My hometown, Warsaw, was completely ruined first during the German bombing and occupation, then as an act of revenge following the Warsaw Uprising. The royal castle, a sign of independence and sovereignty, was to be destroyed to the ground. In some places, several holes in the foundation were drilled in order to put the landmines. As a result, the castle should have blown up. The great symbol of Poland should have ceased to exist. Paradoxically, the same reason drove the communist regime for 25 years after the war, when they have been continually refusing to rebuild it. This is another example of destroying the cultural landscape and monuments. And this is Royal Castle. Immediately after the war, communist government had the idea to transfer the capital of Poland to other city, less destroyed and easier to manage. Warsaw had a reputation of the proud, invincible, and defiant. This opinion was confirmed once again immediately after the end of the war. People voted with their feet for the capital to remain in the same place where it was earlier. Thousands and thousands of survivors were coming back and starting to arrange places to live and conduct small businesses. The government had to yield, and the capital remained in Warsaw. The authorities reached a decision to reconstruct the whole city, including medieval Old Town, since it was a district inhabited by modest people, therefore presenting a model of preferred historical vision. The regime didn't even want to talk about rebuilding the castle. At first, in lieu of the royal castle, the communist authorities wanted to build a modern hotel and huge building in the style of the Moscow governmental palaces. The symbol of the Polish monarchy was out of the question. When the plan to build the hotel failed, the place remained empty for many years. Warsaw citizens and tourists entering the old town through the castle square could see only the concrete paving on the ground. They could also see one lonely part of a wall with a window, previously the window of a room of a famous Polish writer. It was a silent witness that there used to be something significant in this place. Youngsters and newcomers didn't know what it was. The older people knew the secret and kept this knowledge for themselves and passed it on to their families. Their circle was broad enough to keep the issue up to date and important for 25 years. The communists failed, trying to erase both traces of the building and outlines of the social memory. In 1971, during a political crisis and under pressure of the public opinion, the government decided to rebuild the castle. A quarter of a century had to pass so that the evident social and historical need could be fulfilled. The story of the reconstruction of the Warsaw Old Town and the Royal Castle shows how much depends on the will, determination of the people and their attachment to the history and place. Saving heritage, without any doubt, demands a hard work and professional competence, but they are not enough if it doesn't go together with great imagination and even bigger conviction. Perhaps so strong commitment was a decisive reason of successful reconstruction of some monuments. This part of the city represents happy past of the olden days, constitutes missing element, a gap that used to scream to be finally filled. The story of this severely injured city got its happy end of some sort. In 1980, Warsaw Old Town was included on the list of UNESCO World Heritage. Let's move a few years back. The reconstruction of Warsaw Castle began 9 years earlier. The communists thought that despite their reluctant agreement, the construction works won't be possible because of the fundamental problem in such cases, both now and back then, lack of money. They certainly didn't expect such spontaneous and massive reaction of people and abroad, in Poland and abroad in favor of rebuilding the castle. For Poles, it was and still is a symbol of the glory and unbroken existence of their state and nation. They proved their attachment with a big transfer of money, personal presence at the construction site, and thousands of petitions sent to government. Architects and historians brought all useful historical sources, documents, paintings, photos, and testimonies. Specification data was huge and extremely detailed. As a result, we obtained an exact copy of the destroyed original. If one looks carefully at the bricks of the castle or at the houses surrounding it, one can see emotions concealed in them. Memory and emotions very often go together, specifically if it concerns recent facts, personal stories and courts in families and or in local communities. They can be a decisive contributor of great efforts on very big scale in any issue. History watched from a long distance, persons or facts belonging to distant history have a magic force to create positive attitude and strengthen identity of people. An extensive time lapse doesn't mean a weak commitment to history. Evidence, one of many, is Latvian collection of Folksongs, edited and compiled by an outstanding Latvian scholar, Krišjānis Barons, from 1878 through 1915. Latviu Dainas is a collection consisting of 1.3 million texts from 19th century, modern times, but also from Middle Ages as well as pre-Christian era, handwritten on minuscule sheets of paper. The majority of the material was collected in Latvia. It represents many regions and parishes of the whole country. It contains all the traditional genre of intangible folklore, folk songs, legends, riddles, proverbs, games, dances, and melodies. It covers all thematic, functional, and stylistic variations occurring in the tradition of people who used to live in this part of the continent. What's even more interesting is that those texts reflect additionally the ancient tales along with pagan motifs preserved through centuries by the oral transmission. Here we have a precious historical source, abundant of content and forms. Another example are the medieval tales written down by hundreds of teachers at the beginning of the 19th century and edited in several volumes in folio soon afterwards. Together with Latviu Dainas, this documentary heritage makes an extraordinary basis for scientific research in many fields: history, anthropology, religion, and ethnography. On the other side, this is a way to build up deeply rooted identity of people from this area who later formed the Baltic states. A part of them became Latvians. This collection is also an evidence of how much people were dreaming of a solid, coherent concept of their past. It is a proof of how much they were thinking of building their own state in its own right. Long tradition and willingly observed customs with a strong binding material for the whole community. The collection was included in the UNESCO program Memory of the World, and a part of its description states that it is the basis for the study of the Latvian language, study of folklore in general and folk songs in particular, was the main source for creation of Latvian cultural identity. This Latvijas, as the embodiment of this cultural heritage, grew into a cultural symbol with the manuscript Dainus Capis, symbolizing the hard and scrupulous work of the editor. Signs of memory create a specific cultural space that surrounds every inhabitant of a region or country. Their influence is significant, sometimes even decisive for the behavior of people, for their role models and a way of thinking about their plans and duties. Since our future depends on culture, on cultural framework we grew up and were formed in, one must admit that preserving historical signs and monuments is vital business matter. In fact, symbols of the past outline our spiritual territory. Therefore, taking care about historical vestiges is not only moral duty, but first of all, fundamental issue for the future of our civilization. The task won't be an easy one, definitely won't be inexpensive. The challenges lying in front of the communities willing to do it are numerous: lack of the funds, lack of political will, or even political will to do otherwise, social dispersion, and decreasing need to actually have a sense of roots. We can probably think of many more, maybe some more typical for a certain country or region. Can we avoid to do it? Or rather, should I ask, can we afford not to do it? Personally, I strongly lobby against the second option. We cannot afford to give up the idea. One of the factors of the great importance in the strengthening our societies and our countries is to give them solid cultural foundation. To give up such a thing would be to give up a spine. This is the main duty that lays ahead of us. It is an important and it's a difficult one. The title Double Challenge, a Double Duty, in fact means that the only way to avoid the danger of losing identity is to meet this challenge and fulfill this duty. Thank you for your attention.